Good day, podcast community. We have a special podcast for you this morning. Paige is a marketing person. And I love talking marketing with anybody that will talk with me. So we met on LinkedIn, and I invited her on, and she took the invitation. So we're gonna talk about Paige's story. So Paige, introduce who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Well, thank you, Pete, for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you today. So I started a global branding and digital marketing firm about 23 years ago. I
Mhm.
come out of corporate marketing. I was at P&G and Coca-Cola. I worked at a lot of startups as the head of marketing, three that all had good exits. And then I hung out my shingle right after 9/11. And we work with organizations of all sizes, small, medium, large, nonprofit,
Mhm.
industry agnostic. And we help organizations find the right words and pictures to tell their story in a way that can sell more of their products and services faster. So I love marketing, I love branding. And, I really feel like marketing matters. That's our tagline, because marketing matters. I think a lot of people out there think of marketing as a necessary evil, but I really think it works. And it's really important to help find your audience and sell more of your stuff.
I totally agree. It just literally filled my heart as you're talking those marketing that I love hearing because I before I had a stroke, I had a digital marketing business, small. And we'd always say 50% of marketing works and 50% doesn't. So you got to figure out which works. And if you're camping in that doesn't work category, you're going to say, hey, marketing doesn't work. And it's just we haven't done the right thing. So I want to go back to what you said when you started to hang your shingle out. I mean, where the rubber meets the road is entrepreneurship. So tell our viewers, like, when you're deciding to do your own thing, what was that mindset like? What was that process that you went through to make that decision to be on your own?
So if you had met me in college or grad school, this was not the path I was on by any means. I
Mhm.
looked at people like Meg Whitman and Ursula Burns. I wanted to be a Fortune 500 CEO. That was the
Mhm.
path I thought I was on. My dad and both my grandfathers were in business. They all ran big companies, small
Mhm.
companies, and that's just what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I started down that path, like I said, working for some of the most recognized companies and respected brands in the world. You know, P&G invented the concept of brand management. Every category they compete in, they are number one and sometimes also number two.
Mhm.
Coca-Cola is probably the most recognized brand in the world, and I loved it. It was big brand, big platform. You give people your business card and they recognize it, and you're loved all over the world. But when the internet started taking off in the mid to late 90s, it was like the shiny object that kept distracting me, and I kept looking at all these cool businesses popping up, raising money and doing kind of really cool things, and I couldn't I couldn't look away. And I left my big cushy corporate job at Coke, where I had a big office and my own secretary and all that. And I left to go join a business no one had ever heard of before. But they had raised, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars. They didn't have any proper marketing. And they brought me on as their first head of marketing. And, I think most people, my boss, my parents, I think everyone thought I was having a nervous breakdown or something. But it just seemed like such a cool challenge to me to take a business no one had ever heard of and kind of make its mark, help it become recognized and visible and useful. And it was in Los Angeles and Santa Monica, a few blocks from the ocean.
Mhm.
And it was like one of those fasten your seatbelts. It's a wild ride. And less than 2 years later, we went public and we were sold to Yahoo. So it was one of those .com success stories. Then my husband got a job in Cambridge, Massachusetts, other side of the country. And I had already um, all of my options vested at the IPO, so there was no financial reason for me to stay there. So my
Hmm.
husband and I moved to the East Coast, and I joined another startup as the head of marketing. And less than 2 years later, we actually were sold to the largest privately held media company in the world. That's
Mm.
even better than going public because they just write you a check and you're done. There's no lockup period or anything. Then I did another startup as the head of marketing, and we went public and we were sold as well.
Hmm.
So I call them my three base hits. I made a little money three times, but I didn't work for, Facebook or LinkedIn or Google. Like, I didn't make $2 billion like Sheryl Sandberg, but I made a little money three times and had a blast. But when
Hmm.
9/11 hit, you're old enough to remember this,
Hmm.
the markets went crazy. I mean, now it's hard to even remember, but back then, if the stock market dropped 600 points, people panicked.
Hmm.
And all the companies shut down their marketing. They were scared to spend a penny because they were afraid they were never going to be able to raise money again. Now the stock market goes up and down a few hundred points every day and people don't even blink anymore. But
Yes.
you know, because I had three, successes of venture-backed startups, I knew a lot of people in the VC community, private equity, and I'd help them make a little money. And so I had great contacts and relationships.
Hmm.
And nobody had a marketing department anymore since they fired everybody. And I ended up, because of my contacts, my friends, and relations, the people that I went to school with or had jobs with, um, people still had marketing problems. They just didn't have a marketing department. So, people were asking me for help saying, you know, we have this trade show coming up, or we have a new product launch, or we need a new website. Could you help us? We don't have anybody left in house. And my first instinct, honestly, Pete, was like, I'm not a consultant. I didn't work on the agency side. Like, I
Hmm.
know what you need, but like, I'm the client. I'm the chief marketing officer. My husband said, Paige, you know what to do. Like, you've been doing this for a long time. Just tell him you'll help him. And what else are you going to do? I had just gotten bought out of my third company. So, he's like, Paige, there's this red flashing sign in front of you. Just go help. So I started calling all my favorite marketing people that I had worked with in my career. They were classmates or people at P&G and Coke or people at the startups. Everybody had just been laid off. So people were just twiddling their thumbs, thinking about what to do next. I had people, I had projects, and I just started putting them together. And I called the women the marketing mavens and the guys the marketing moguls. For
Hmm.
short, they were the mavens and moguls. And we just put together teams of people for each of the projects that I was aware of. And I thought, we'll help out a few people and pretty soon we'll all go back and take, real jobs again. But every one of those early projects led to more and more projects. And because a lot of my contacts were investors and board members and venture capitalists, they'd have a portfolio of companies they needed help with. So we'd help one and they'd say, you know what you did for that? Could you come help us do it for these two other ones? So I joke that I'm like the accidental entrepreneur. I never thought I'd be starting a company. I never wrote a business plan. I did build a website right away because I felt like, because I come out of big corporate kind of uh, more traditional consumer products, packaged goods marketing, I wanted to make sure we cleaned up well and that we, if
Hmm.
people checked us out, they would know we were real. So a
Yeah.
college buddy of mine was trying to learn how to program website. She decided she was kind of enamored with this whole .com boom too. So she did the coding and I wrote the copy and that was our very first website. It ended up lasting for like 5 years. It's so embarrassing now to think like we're like the cobbler's kids with no shoes. We were the marketing company with this starter website, but we had so much work early on. We just kept going with it.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just connecting the dots, kind of taking advantage of the fact that we had this pipeline of work, and
Hmm.
we just hit the ground running, and I've never looked back. I mean, it's funny to me that my longest job before starting this business was about 3.5 years, and I started this company, more than 2 decades ago. So I joke that if I get sick of my boss this time, I'm dead, because I don't think I could ever go back and work for anybody else again.
Yeah, that is. I want to go back to a couple things you said. When you got on the phone and started calling people, and I want to just encourage our community because we've gotten into a lot of technology. We're texting, we're emailing, but you started to call people. Why did you do that? What led you, and just kind of share with our viewers the value of those human connections.
So I'm a little old school, to be brutally honest.
Hmm.
Like, a friend of mine from college is the co-founder of LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
he jokes that I was the first person that like did e-intros when he would call and or email me and say like, I'm looking for someone, or do you know anybody who? And I'd say, oh, I have the perfect person. Let me introduce you. And I do
Hmm.
an e-intro. So like for me, I am very kind of person to person, like a human to human. I have people say, do you do B2B marketing? Do you do B2C marketing? The truth is, I do P2P marketing. It's like there's always a person on the other end. And, I've always been someone who was very, viral in a more traditional sense. Like I don't really collect stuff. I collect people in my life. And
Hmm.
I keep in touch with people, grade school friends and summer camp friends,
Hmm.
college friends, work colleagues, neighbors. And I really like doing things, picking up the phone, meeting people for
Hmm.
coffee, or, kind of human connection. And we can talk about this in the context of all the technology and artificial intelligence. I really think having that human connection is really more important now than ever, because as people get more dependent on the technology and the robots and the AI, your superpower is really being that authentic personal brand that you can stand out from all the generic robotic copy and sea of sameness out there. If you're not using what's unique, special, and different to you, um, you're just going to blend in. So I always encourage my clients, your origin story, just like the one you heard of mine, is
Hmm.
unique. That's, the
Yeah.
war stories that you have, being in the trenches, the good, the bad, the ugly, the mistakes you made, the fact that humans can be vulnerable and
Hmm.
connect on a more emotional human level. That's all you got now, because that you cannot compete with the robots. They can read faster. They can, you know, give you the summaries and the reports. They can do a lot of things better than humans, but they don't have those personal stories and those personal connections. So when I was trying to staff those very original first clients,
Hmm.
I thought about who in my career, I had built marketing teams for years
Yeah.
before hanging out the shingle. And I thought, who are the people that I liked working with? Really
Yes.
smart, fun to be in the trenches with. And I
Hmm.
knew I kind of needed a full service marketing department. I
Yeah.
needed PR people and market research people and strategy people, graphic designers, web designers. Like if I was going to put on the website that we could help you do a lot of things, I don't do all those things. And I need
Hmm.
a team around me, and we need to be able to work together and enjoy working together and be in a team. So, who are the team players? Who's creative? Who's fun? Who's smart? And I just called a handful of people, and we went from that to now about 4 dozen people that have, kind of cobbled together this virtual marketing department.
Hmm.
And we've helped companies literally all over the world, North America, South America, Middle East, Europe, I mean, all over Asia. And it's great because the technology and the tools are there to support you,
Yep.
but it's the human connection that really sustains you and helps you stand out from the pack.
I love it. I want to go back to what you also said, because you hear solo entrepreneur and it's kind of like, I'm a good multitasker. There's not a good multitasker, nor is there a good solo entrepreneur, because it's teams. So, talk to our viewers about the importance of building teams, and what has that helped you obtain that level of success around teams?
So, the leverage in my model is not a traditional consulting or agency model where you've got like, the top person at the top of the pyramid, and then you've got kind of layers going down, the vice presidents, the managers, the coordinators. And then, you have a junior person that you pay them, call it $50 an hour, and then you charge them out at $200 an hour or something. I never liked that model when I was on the client side,
Mm-hmm.
because I always felt like, if the senior people came in and pitched the business and you really like them and you like their smarts and their strategy, and then you'd never see them again. They go away, and then you'd end up with these junior people doing the work, and you'd have to say, no, that's not what we said, or that's not right. And then you end up training their staff. And I never liked that model when I was on the other side of the table. So
Mm-hmm.
our organization is really flat. And what I realized early on, again, having started at the very bottom at P&G and worked my way up, um, I know what I'm good at. I know what's kind of intuitive to me and what I'm better at than anybody else. I also know there are people I've worked with that are really strong in areas where I'm weak.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the very, very beginning, when I was setting us up, the firm, and building the website with my friend, I knew I didn't want my name to be the company. I wanted it to be kind of a team effort. And I think people do naturally work better in teams. And I
Yes.
think when you lead a group, to be brutally honest about like where you're strong and where you need reinforcement. And I feel like when we staff a project, if every single person on the team is doing what they do best, that they love doing, you're going to get like all guns firing in a way that, you just can't compete with that. If the market research is being led by somebody who lives, breathes, dies research, stays
Mm-hmm.
up on all the greatest and latest technologies, you definitely want that person, not me, running the research. And I had great relationships, which led
Mm-hmm.
to the connections and the meetings um, that got our foot in the door. And because of that, a lot of the clients originally said, well, Paige, I've heard so much about you, or my board chair or my investor, or says you're the greatest. I want you to work on the project. I'm like, I'll be there, but you don't want me doing all the different pieces. You got to trust me on that. And I used to use the analogy that I was the conductor of a world-class orchestra, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't play the instruments individually the best. I had a violinist and a oboe and a clarinet and a percussionist, and those people were the specialists in what they do. But I can get everybody to make great music together. And that's really the truth of how we've been able to scale and grow, because anybody in the group can have a relationship that they can bring into Mavens and Moguls, and we can help, you know, support them, and they would get paid for bringing in that client. But that doesn't mean they're going to be able to do all the work. They are going to need reinforcement. So you can do work without um, do work without bringing in the work. You can bring in the work without doing the work, or there's a hybrid where you bring it in, you do a piece of it, and then other people support you. So
Mm-hmm.
the way we're scaling is not by leveraging, marking up everybody, um, so that people make money. We're scaling because we've got overlapping connections where we're sharing resources in a way that kind of lets everybody thrive and flourish doing what they do best. And what I love about that is the clients feel like they're getting such great value
Hmm.
because we're all, I'd say, a little typing neurotic. And
Yeah.
everybody, when we put together a proposal, we'll tell people, here's what we're doing, here's how much time it's going to take, here's how much it's going to cost. But the truth is, everybody's putting in probably 20 or 25% more time than they even expected because they love what they do. They're
Hmm.
really good at it. So the client's feeling like they're getting great value. And at the end of the day, we're solving the problem. They're getting their problems fixed and they're thriving as a result of the support we've provided. And they end up being our best marketing and advertising because they'll tell people, oh my
Yes.
God, you got to work with these people. They're amazing. They're so good at what they do. They're all, everybody's fun to work with. And so that's really our secret sauce. That's the superpower that
Yep.
when you have good chemistry, good culture, and everyone's really, they love what they do and they're having fun. And, everybody's bringing their A game every day. I think one of the things I resented the most in my corporate job is once a year you'd go through these performance reviews and your
Hmm.
boss would say, you're really good at this thing, but this other stuff, we really need to work on these opportunity areas. And I'm thinking, like, two guys that I sit next to are great in that. Why don't you give them that work and
Yep.
let me do the stuff that I do best?
Yep.
I'm never going to be as good as they are at that, but I am the best person to do all this other stuff. And I really do feel like when people are in the zone and they're really hitting on all cylinders all the time, that's when you're getting the very best work. That's where people, the days fly. You do not look at the clock. You're
Yes.
thinking about it. You're out exercising or, you're taking your weekends and your brain is still going because you're having fun and you love it. And you're like, oh, I want to try that. Or, ooh, I never thought of that. And that's where the magic happens.
I love it. I love when you said that analogy with the orchestra leader because you hear all the instruments just hitting on all cylinders, and everybody thinks that that just comes together magically. But that orchestra leader knows how to get the most out of each instrument of the person playing it, and it's beautiful when it's performing at its highest level.
You got it.
We've shifted. I used to be involved in B&I years ago, and a lot of my friends are still like focused on the local. They're spending so much time, in that local market. They miss the global market that's happening. What would you say to people that have a local business? You mentioned some global clients and stuff. How do you talk to them in such a way that they can see the world now has shifted to global? What would you say to my local people that are so focused on that local?
Well, if you have a website, by definition, the world is your customer or your
Mm.
client. They don't have to, if you have a brick and mortar business, yes, you get foot traffic. Yes, people go to your shop or store. But today, if we learned anything during COVID, it's that you don't exist if you're not online. And
Right.
if you're online, anybody in the world can access your site.
Mm.
And if whether you're an e-commerce business that's selling stuff online, or you're selling advice or knowledge, or whatever widget it is, webinars, books, um, you really do need to realize that you are bigger than your backyard, and that's just
Mhm.
the world we live in now. It's not like it was, when I was a kid. Everything was kind of local and small. The television had three stations, three networks, and public television.
We're the same era. Yeah, I do remember.
and that was it, and now you've got streaming and
Yes.
cable and dish TV. I mean, you've got hundreds literally of choices, and
Yeah.
that's the way it is. So, I would just recommend any small business owner, even if, you think of yourself, and it's great to be strong in your community, in your backyard, but it's really just your starting point. Um, you know, I think all the businesses start kind of with a stake in the ground, and then like concentric circles, you kind of grow, with each step. And again, when Amazon started, they were the world's biggest bookseller. All they did was sell books. That was it. And it's hard to even remember back then, but
Hmm.
people didn't like put their credit card online. Everyone was a little bit skittish and nervous, but they built that trust and built those relationships by selling you books. And when that worked, then they went into music. And when that worked, they went into videos. And so they just kept growing kind of
Hmm.
a little bit at a time. And now, I mean, you would buy anything on Amazon, they have your credit card stored. You'd buy jewelry or, you know, any expensive items, cheap items, it doesn't matter at all. I think small businesses, you know, there really are no kind of small businesses anymore. You could have customers and clients
Yep.
anywhere in the world. And especially if you're selling stuff that's like, things you can um, learn online, think about all the different services of, brick and mortars. If you want your dry cleaning done or, that you do need to find somebody in your backyard for convenience. But if you want to learn a language, if you want, like, there's so many B2B and B2C businesses that can be delivered through the internet now. Uh,
Yes.
Consulting services, certainly. So I would just encourage people, you know, um, think about all the people that you can help on a
Mhm.
much broader level, because it really is bigger than, it's great to be involved in local networking organizations, but think about the ways that you can transfer that knowledge and those relationships, with Zoom, with all these online platforms and all the social media platforms. You really are reaching people in a much broader way if you think about it, not to scare yourself, but
Mhm.
if you're blogging, if you're tweeting, the people reading that, the people following you
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, they are everywhere in the world.
Like,
So it's
it-
just important to realize that today.
I want to go back to when you went from corporate to doing your own thing. There's a lot to be said with that comfort zone that we get in. We get that consistent paycheck every week. We get that big office. We get that manufactured budget that we can just spend whatever we want within the budget. But then when you can be so comfortable that you don't want to step out to try new things. What were you thinking? Like, what could you encourage our viewers that have? Because I did almost the same thing. I was working for Nabisco, and I saw people 20 years ahead of me, and I didn't want to be captured with such a cush job that too much was on the line that I wouldn't take a chance. So I took a chance earlier than others. But we don't erect statues to people living in the comfort zone. Like, hey, Paige, she lived a comfortable life. She never took chances. She was just in the zone of comfort. What do you do to challenge yourself and get out of that comfort zone that you could share with our community?
I mean, I think having a growth mindset, especially today, is critical. You
Hmm.
really need to find ways to continually learn and grow and push yourself. And whether it's reading online or offline, attending conferences, listening to TED Talks, reading trade journals, there are a lot of online conferences you can attend. Literally, if you don't want to spend the time or money to go fly to an event, you could go to a webinar. You know, a lot of them stream their speeches.
Mhm.
Great, you know, very famous speakers. You can follow them. Some of them have YouTube stations. You can see what they're talking about. And again, with all these new tools and technologies, the artificial intelligence, I mean, I feel like there are new things popping up literally every week. You
Mhm.
have to keep growing and learning, because otherwise life's going to pass you by. You're going to get left behind. So, you know, it might feel uncomfortable at first, but you really do need to just make professional development, make learning kind of part of your to-do list. And it can start again, if you like reading, read. If you like watching videos, watch videos. But you can learn so much today. You know, Google has um, a lot of tutorials, you know, just to, you know, you can spend 5, 7 hours doing like a certification course
Mhm.
in artificial intelligence. And it's very step by step. They will hold your hand and give you stuff to read and show you videos that help you learn about what is going on. You know, there's a saying now that says artificial intelligence is not going to take your job away, but people who understand artificial intelligence will. And so, you know,
Yes.
you have the onus is on you. Don't be scared. I know it's kind of you think you graduate from college and you're done, but it's not that way. You know, you have to keep your skills fresh, keep your saw sharp. Um, and, you know, again, think about how you best learn. And that's the great thing today. The tools are so flexible, whether
Mhm.
whether you like to listen or watch or read, those options are everywhere around you. But it's great if you could carve out an hour or two a week, or, you know, part of your weekend, and just say, you know, I'm going to dedicate this chapter of, you know, again, it can be small. You can do it in an hour or two a week, but just say, I am not going to, you know, put my head in the sand, because that's not a good strategy.
No.
And, you know, you don't have to be the world's best programmer. There are a lot of ways you can build a website that, again, are very intuitive now, you
Mhm.
know, and that's one of the great things about all the artificial intelligence. You can learn to program like in plain English in a way that never existed before.
Yes.
So, you know, make yourself you know, I think you need to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable and getting out of your comfort zone, because otherwise life's going to pass you by. And the way to stay relevant, the way to kind of keep yourself out there, to be useful, to be productive, to keep moving forward in life, is to learn and grow. It's not about turning into a one trick pony, because once that pony trick is done, you're going to be stuck.
Yeah, it is so true. We teach on like the four human drivers, and you hit on all four of them. The first one is aliveness, and our viewers can see and hear your aliveness. But the second one's connection, which you talked about how important those relationships were. Meaningful purpose. I can only imagine your purpose of where you're going, and the last one's personal growth. But what does when Paige thinks about the future and her purpose, her meaningful purpose, what gets you excited? What do you like to share with our community that gets Paige excited?
So, you know, I feel very lucky that I've built this platform to do stuff I enjoy doing. And again, I didn't use my name. Mavens and Moguls, our tagline is about marketing, but the platform lets me do the things that I enjoy doing and connecting with people and causes that mean something to me. And
Mm-hmm.
again, if it's your business, if it's your name on the door, if you're the CEO, the buck stops with you. And if you're not doing work that you care about or that you feel matters, you need to kind of vote with your feet and decide, this is how I want to spend my time. I think,
Mhm.
you know, early on in my business, I fired it was my biggest client at the time. And I
Mhm.
fired him because I didn't like him as a person. I didn't think he treated my team very well. And
Mhm.
I didn't want to find out, fast forward and realize I had built my business helping people I didn't really support
Mhm.
personally or professionally, even if they were willing to pay me a lot of money. Um, that wasn't how I wanted to spend my time. That wasn't the best use of my gift. And I think one of the most important words you need to learn in business is no. And by
Mhm.
kind of understanding what 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 your kind of core values are,
Mhm.
and how you want to spend your valuable time and resources, um, those are the people and the businesses, I think, that really set themselves up for success, to thrive long term. By closing the door to that one client, it opened up opportunities and time and energy to support businesses I really believed in and people that I thought were doing amazing work and that really aligned with our team's values. And, you can't spread yourself too thin. You really want to make sure
Mhm.
that you've got the right energy and resources to pour into things that really matter to you and that
Yes.
you feel that make a difference in the world. So I would just encourage people, you know, again, it is a little scary as an entrepreneur, uh,
Yes.
and especially if you're a solopreneur or if you're doing it with a small team. But trust your intuition, trust your gut, and
Mhm.
realize that you want to move forward working with and for people that really resonate with you on every level. And if it feels like it's not moving in that direction, you need to have the courage to kind of hit the pause button and
Mhm.
make sure, reevaluate, and say, is this the direction I want to go? Are these the problems I want to solve? Am I doing like using my talents and powers at the highest level I can to accomplish the kind of work I want to do and leave the legacy that I want to leave? And if not, it's up to you to kind of draw a line in the sand and say, all right, I got to do better. I was cut out to do more than this. And I feel like that's when people really hit their stride. And again, that's where the magic happens. That's
Oh,
when people really thrive, when they find their zone of excellence.
yes. I love that. And I could go on all day with you, Paige, because I love talking that just what you've shared with our community. And there's so many bits of wisdom that you've dropped in there that I really appreciate you sharing with our community, your story and your background and your expertise. How can people get a hold of you?
So the best way is either on LinkedIn. My
Hmm.
last name is hyphenated, but my LinkedIn is all smushed together with my name, or my website, mavensandmoguls.com.
Hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Paige. As we wind down, what would be the one thing that you want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast?
So I guess if you don't remember anything else, think about the relationships behind the technology. That at the end of the day, there's a human being on the other side, and nothing happens until that person kind of wants things to advance further. So, as human beings, as people with hearts and brains and, bodies, don't fall into the trap of like everything's a robot now and it's all driven by technology. That the technology is there to support us, but it's the human being behind the curtain, if you will, that ultimately, you're building relationships, and those relationships are what lead to things actually advancing and moving forward. So, I just feel like the more the world gets speeds up in internet time, and the more new technologies and tools that get developed, the more important it is to show your humanity, to
Yep.
share those personal stories, to be vulnerable, because that's what's going to connect with people on an emotional level. And that's where you're going to be able to stand out. If all you've got are the same tools and technologies as everyone else, you're going to be a commodity.
Yep.
Commodities compete on price, and that's a downward spiral. If you don't have anything that's unique, special, and different about you and your brand, you're never going to be able to stand out today.
That is awesome. Well, Paige, thank you so much for spending some time with our community and our audience. And we really appreciate your insights into your story and your growth of your business. So thanks so much for being with us. We
Thank
appreciate
you, Pete. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
you. You're welcome.